To this now, political parties in Parliament have expressed mixed reaction following the outcome of the Lady R vessel probe. Last night, President Cyril Ramaphosa told the nation that there's no evidence that South Africa sold weapons to Russia. He was providing an update on the docking of the Russian vessel Lady R in Simonstown last year.
The ANC caucus welcomed the report by independent panel that there was no evidence whatsoever that Lady R ship was loaded with weapons that were sent to Russia by our government. We saw the leader of the opposition party acting very irresponsible, misrepresenting facts, working with the media to dent the image and the integrity of our country. And we are calling for all those who are not patriotic that it is high time that we rally together behind our government, because when the economy go down because of such irresponsible statement, the country suffers.
We knew all the time that no complete manufactured weapons were loaded. That still do not denounce that nothing else were loaded. The truth is that at about 3 o'clock on Friday morning, the crane was still busy loading stuff under spotlights onto the vessel, while the 7 containers with the ammunition that were offloaded during the previous nights were delivered to the ammunition depot in Mokopong on that same Friday evening. It seems the scope of the panel was designed to be very limited, to only provide for the predetermined outcome. The ANC government is still not open and transparent with South Africa. We as the DA will not stop until the illegal and irregular behavior of ANC government is exposed and government is held accountable for the deplorable behavior which is damaging South Africa.
Announcement by President Ramaphosa to the country last night, particularly on the Lady R matter, leaves more questions than answers. Somebody is being economical with the truth here. Either those that provided the information to President Ramaphosa or Honorable Murray, who received information from people who had alleged that some goods were loaded onto the ship. Whatever was loaded or offloaded on Lady R, it brings into question the fact that countries are now involved, because United States of America ambassador had made comments. We've got Russia involved here. It's a Russian ship, and South Africa. So one would think that the country deserves better answers, and we would call for an inquiry which goes beyond just that committee that was set up by the president.
The problem is that the president declared that the panel gave reasons why the Lady R did not dock in daylight but at night, but is not going to reveal the reasons for that. Why not? And that creates suspicion and creates more questions. There is no risk of compromise for declaring the reasons why the ship docked at night. Therefore, as far as I'm concerned, there is still a snake in the grass.
The ACDP contends that what this is a battle between the superpowers and the hegemony of these superpowers. South Africa walks a tightrope, and South Africa has to always walk on the side of truth. We understand that we have interests, trade interests, in both the West as well as the East, and the hegemonic powers of these interests would seek to want to influence South Africa in one way or the other. The ACDP calls on the South African government to always walk on the path of truth.
Al-Jamaa is shocked that the Democratic Alliance and others could not produce any evidence that weapons were loaded by South Africa onto the Lady R ship that docked in Simonstown in December. The official opposition and other parties have done a very unpatriotic move by putting it out that South Africa is supplying Russia with weapons. This is, in Al-Jamaa's view, one of the steps that the official opposition has put in place to bring about regime change in South Africa.
It is very difficult to trust anything from this ANC government. For argument's sake, let's say this 3-member panel had found out that weapons were indeed loaded in that vessel known as Lady R. What difference would it make? Because the ANC would still take the findings to Parliament and vote against them as if they never existed. South Africa, a republic gone bananas.
The President's remarks yesterday that the Lady R's report, which found no evidence of arms loaded into the ship en route to Russia, contains classified information. We, however, urge the President to only release those aspects of the report which do not pose a threat to South Africa's national security. This is important in order to promote transparency and openness, and also for his office as the President.
All right, let's stay with this matter now and speak to Hennie Van Vuuren, who's Open Secrets Director, who joins us live now. Thank you so much, Hennie, for your time. You heard, I'm sure, the mixed reaction from the various political parties on this particular matter. Where do you stand?
Yeah, Bongiwe, good afternoon. Well, I think we stand on the side of openness and transparency, and I think we've had a partial opening of that window by the President last night in his statement. He promised today that we'd see an executive summary of the report. It's 5 p.m. on the Monday thereafter. We still haven't seen anything, but I think the real concern, of course, is that the report itself will remain secret. A panel was constituted, an inquiry by the President headed by a judge. We've raised questions about whether a judge should in fact have been part of a process where he's acting in the interest of the judiciary in a closed, of the executive, of the President, in a closed process. We don't want judges acting in what are effectively closed processes, Bongiwe, and I think that's a concern that the Chief Justice and other judges, we argue, should be grappling with now, whether judges should even allow themselves to be part of processes where they are acting in the interest of the executive or the President, as has happened in this case. And I think ultimately South Africans do have every right to know some information, not everything. There's good reason how and why information could have been released in much greater detail, with some crucial information, of course, redacted, Bongiwe. I think there's an understanding that there may be some issues around defense, security, etc. But certainly I think a greater volume of information could have been made public, precisely because I think there is a concern not only to the extent in which this has imperiled our relations potentially with various countries, but the devastating economic impact this had earlier this year. The President spoke about that last night.
Yeah.
People have suffered and therefore have a right to know.
And of course, as you say, there is this intricate balance between the public interest in this particular matter as well as the classified nature of some of the information provided, so that it doesn't jeopardize the various military operations. But I wonder then, when it comes to, something else that the President mentioned repeatedly even, is the issue around the non-aligned stance. And we know what had happened when this particular matter was brought to the fore. There were lots of questions being asked. Do you think, in your view, we're still successful in telling everyone that we've taken no side here?
I think, Bongiwe, the one thing that will answer that question is openness. The President said to us last night that there was an order that was made in 2018 for the delivery of these ammunitions from Russia. Well, if we look at the government's, the National Conventional Arms Control Committee's reports, we see that there were, in fact, from what I understand, there was no authorized delivery of weapons that we were expecting from Russia in 2018, only the years that followed that, 2019 and 2020. Now, the President may have misspoke here, but the devil here is certainly in the detail. And when we rely on statements alone from politicians as opposed to seeing the detailed evidence that was put before this panel headed by Judge Mojapelo, it makes it very hard for the public and for South Africa's own partners around the world to understand how we are trading that balance as a so-called non-aligned country, or country that argues that it remains neutral in Russia's invasion of the Ukraine and other such conflicts. So I think that transparency and openness is certainly the answer, and we haven't seen enough of that in this case. And certainly we are putting in, as Open Secrets have put in an application today to the presidency for full access to that and other material, which we argue is certainly in the interest that the Mojapelo panel has considered. And
it'll be also interesting to see how far, the scope and how wide the scope is in terms of the terms of reference, what's happening in this particular regard, because the president talks about the circumstances that led up to this, and all of that is contained in this particular report. But there's another important aspect to this one. Since the president is saying, the probe is saying the allegations are not true, what should then happen to the U.S. ambassador who was confident that this, in fact, did happen?
Yeah, well, Bongiwe, I think, we would argue that it was really up to the U.S. ambassador, Ruben Brigetti, not only to make a threat to say we have information that you've done wrong, South Africa, but to produce that evidence. And he hasn't done that. We've, in fact, written to the American authorities and various intelligence agencies in the U.S. State Department to say, kindly, in terms of U.S. law, produce that evidence of South Africa's so-called wrongdoing or the export of weapons to Russia. And it's important that I think that for the credibility of the United States, it can't now do, if you like, a bit of a backtracking behind closed doors of the South African authorities. Either you had the information or you didn't. And if you did, it's time that you made that information public for all publics to see, not only for the politicians and people who have access to such so-called classified information. So I think there is precedent, there should be pressure on Ambassador Brigetti, the US Ambassador to South Africa, to provide the evidence of which he spoke, and he spoke on so authoritatively.
And it's going to be interesting to see if that pressure is ramped up then from various other sectors, Hennie. But thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Do appreciate your views. That is Hennie Van Vuuren, Open Secrets Director.